Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. In a world where wealth and status often dictate every move, can a contract marriage ever lead to something real? Meet Alex Knight, a powerful and successful CEO, used to getting everything he wants except for love. He's built an empire, yet, behind his high-rise offices and lavish penthouse, there's a void, an emptiness that money can't fill. Alex needs a wife to maintain his image, someone who can play the part in front of his business partners, his family, and the media. That's where Emily comes in. Emily Parker has been struggling. She's always been a fighter, but lately, life has felt like it's beating her down. She's been trying to keep her small family-run restaurant afloat, facing rising debts and mounting pressure. After her father's sudden illness, the financial burden has nearly crippled her. Emily knows that she'll lose everything if she doesn't do something drastic fast. That's when Alex's proposition lands in her lap. A marriage of convenience, no strings attached. At first, the idea seems absurd, marrying a man she's never met, just for money and stability. But what's the alternative? Another sleepless night wondering how to pay the bills, or worse, watching her dreams slip away. So, with a heavy heart, she agrees to the deal. The wedding is small, quiet, just a handful of witnesses. There are no grand vows, no promises of love, just two people signing papers. Emily walks down the aisle with a nervous smile, wearing the simple dress Alex arranged for her. She's not sure what she's walking into, but she's walking into it anyway. Alex stands at the altar, looking every bit the powerful businessman he is, but with a mask of indifference, hiding something deeper, something she doesn't understand yet. After the ceremony, he doesn't even kiss her. There's no spark, no fireworks, just a business deal, as cold and professional as everything else in his life. This is not a fairy tale. It's just a contract. Alex doesn't expect to find anything real in this marriage, and neither does Emily. They both agreed to this out of necessity, not desire. But as days pass, they start to share small moments. She sees him when he's not in his tailored suits and polished shoes. She sees him when he's exhausted from late nights in the office, when the stress of running his empire is weighing him down. And for the first time in a long time, she feels like he's human, not just a man of power. They both start to notice the little things, like the way Emily's laughter fills the room, the way Alex listens carefully when she talks about her dreams for her restaurant, how he quietly supports her in the background, despite not being obligated to. And something unexpected begins to grow between them. One evening, after a particularly tough day for both of them, Alex comes home to find Emily sitting on the couch, sketching designs for a new dish she hopes to feature in her restaurant. She looks up at him and smiles, her eyes tired but bright. He hasn't heard her talk like this in a while, and for a moment, he wonders why he never noticed before how much passion she has. Maybe this marriage, this arrangement, is more than he thought. But no. He shakes his head, trying to dismiss the thought. This is just business. He's still keeping his distance, even if he can't help but admire her. Emily, on the other hand, is starting to feel the strain of this arrangement. She agreed to be his wife for the sake of security, but the more time she spends with him, the more she feels conflicted. The man she's married to is kind in his own way, but he's also closed off, distant. She tells herself she doesn't need love, she just needs stability. But every time he looks at her, she can't help but wonder if maybe she's wrong. Maybe they could be something real. But it's too soon to tell, isn't it? The days pass, and Emily begins to notice small changes in Alex. He starts to show up at her restaurant unannounced, offering helpful suggestions and even spending time in the kitchen with her, something he would never have done before. Emily can't help but feel her heart flutter. Could he be warming up to her? Or is he just trying to make the most of their arrangement? She doesn't know, but one thing is certain: this contract marriage is starting to feel a lot less like a business deal and a lot more like the beginning of something she never expected. As the story unfolds, we will see if the lines between fake and real can truly blur, and whether Emily and Alex can find something real in a world they both thought they had no use for. Will they remain in the safety of their contract, or will they find a love that neither of them expected? Stay tuned to find out. As the days passed, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something in her was changing. What was once a cold and calculated arrangement now felt a little warmer, more real. At first, it was subtle: the way Alex would occasionally ask how her day had gone, or the way he stayed silent, just listening to her talk about her hopes and dreams for the restaurant. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something more than business. Emily had never expected to feel anything for him, and yet here she was, unsure of her own emotions. She kept reminding herself this was just a contract. But the lines were starting to blur. The first real sign that things were different came when Alex showed up unannounced at the restaurant one evening. He didn't tell her he was coming, didn't give her a heads up. He just walked through the door, dressed in his usual sharp suit, his briefcase in hand. Emily, who was busy running the kitchen, looked up, startled. "Alex," she said, her voice betraying a hint of surprise. He smiled, a small, rare smile that didn't reach his eyes but softened his normally stoic face. "I thought I'd stop by and see how things are going," he said, his tone casual but with an underlying sincerity she wasn't used to. He didn't wait for an invitation but instead followed her into the kitchen. For a moment, she felt awkward, like he didn't belong in this world of greasy pans and sizzling steaks. But then, Alex rolled up his sleeves, standing by the counter, watching her prepare an order. The sight of him in the kitchen, doing something so mundane, caught her off guard. Emily couldn't help but notice the way he looked at her as she worked, how he asked questions about the ingredients she used, how she cooked certain dishes, even how she handled the pressure of the rush hour. It wasn't the usual cold assessment she was used to from him. It was genuine interest. She tried to push the thought away. This was just business, after all. He was here because it was part of the deal, not because he wanted to be. And yet, as the evening wore on, she found herself glancing over at him more than she should have. That night, after they closed the restaurant, Alex offered to drive her home. Normally, she would have refused, but something about his offer felt different this time. She hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. As they drove through the city streets, the car was filled with the soft hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the radio. Emily didn't speak much, but neither did Alex. The silence between them felt comfortable, even soothing. They arrived at her apartment, a modest one-bedroom place tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Emily turned to thank him, but before she could say anything, Alex spoke up. "I don't know how you do it," he said, his voice low. "You manage all of this, your work, your family, and still, you never seem to crack under pressure." "It's impressive." Emily was taken aback by his words. She had always thought of herself as just getting by, doing what she had to in order to survive. But hearing it from him made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was doing more than just surviving. "Thanks," she said quietly, unsure of how to respond. She had always been independent, always figured things out on her own, but hearing those words from Alex made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. "I think you're doing more than just getting by," he added, glancing over at her with a look that lingered a moment longer than usual. They both fell into silence again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes without the need for words. Emily stepped out of the car, closing the door behind her. She stood for a moment, watching the car drive off, feeling an odd mix of emotions. She wasn't sure what to make of it. Was this just another part of the contract? Or was there something more? As she walked up the stairs to her apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Alex had looked at her, like he was seeing something beyond just the waitress who had signed a contract. She shook her head, trying to push the thought out of her mind. There was no place for feelings in this arrangement. They were married on paper, nothing more. That's how it was supposed to be. But as the days went by, Emily started noticing more subtle changes. Alex wasn't just showing up at the restaurant anymore. He was calling her more frequently, asking how things were going, offering to help with small things she had never asked him for. It was strange, and yet it felt comforting. The lines between what was fake and what was real were starting to blur more and more. It wasn't just the small gestures that were starting to shift things. Emily found herself thinking about him more, wondering what he was doing, how he was feeling. She never expected to care about him this much, and yet, she did. But she couldn't allow herself to admit that yet. She had to stay focused. This was just a contract, a business arrangement. Anything beyond that was too risky. One evening, as they sat together in their living room after dinner, Alex turned to her with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. Emily's heart skipped a beat. What could this be about? Had something changed in their arrangement? Was he going to tell her it was time to go back to the terms they had agreed on? She braced herself, not knowing what to expect. But then, Alex spoke again, his tone softer this time. "I've been thinking a lot about this whole thing about us. And I think I may have made a mistake. Not with the arrangement, but with the way I've treated you. I'm sorry if I've made you feel like you're just a part of this deal." Emily froze, unsure of how to respond. Had she heard him correctly? Alex Knight, the man who was always so composed, so in control, was apologizing to her? The shift in his tone, the vulnerability she saw in his eyes, caught her completely off guard. Was this the man she had been getting to know? Or was it something else entirely? Emily stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest as she processed Alex's words. She never expected him to apologize, let alone admit that he might have made a mistake. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, something she hadn't seen from him before. The confident, aloof CEO who had once seemed so distant and untouchable was now sitting in front of her, looking almost human. Alex's eyes softened as he watched her, waiting for her response. Emily didn't know what to say at first. She wasn't sure what he expected from her, or if he was just trying to make her feel better. She had always been the strong one, the one who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. But here, in this moment, she felt vulnerable too. "I didn't mean to make you feel like just a contract," Alex continued, his voice low. "I know this was supposed to be a business arrangement, but I think I've started to see you in a different light. More than just a partner in this deal." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emily shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had to remind herself that this was still just a contract, just a business deal. She had no reason to believe that Alex's feelings had changed. But the way he was looking at her, the sincerity in his voice, it was hard to ignore. Was this just him trying to justify their arrangement, or was there something more? She cleared her throat, forcing herself to speak. "Alex, we agreed this wasn't about feelings," she said, her voice steady, though her insides were anything but calm. "We're doing this to help each other, and that's all it was supposed to be." She wasn't sure if she was trying to convince him, or herself. But deep down, she knew she couldn't let herself fall for him. Not when everything was still so complicated. Alex nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know," he said, his tone quiet. "I know what we agreed to. But things aren't always as simple as they seem. I never planned for this. I never planned for you." His words sent a chill down Emily's spine, though she couldn't bring herself to look away. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of their breathing filling the space between them. Emily felt a strange mix of emotions swirling inside her: confusion, excitement, fear. She had never allowed herself to entertain the idea that this might become more than just an arrangement, but now, she couldn't ignore the way her heart was racing every time Alex spoke to her with such honesty. "I'm not saying we should change anything," Alex said, breaking the silence. "I just want you to know that I appreciate everything you've done. For the business, for me. And for showing me a side of life I've never really considered." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I never thought I'd need anyone, but now, I'm starting to wonder if I've been wrong all along." Emily's chest tightened. She didn't know what to make of his words. Was he saying he needed her? Was he feeling the same pull between them that she was? She wanted to say something, anything, to make this clearer, but all she could do was sit there in silence. She had to keep reminding herself that this wasn't real, that they were both still playing a part. I never thought I'd need someone either, Emily replied softly, almost to herself. But things change. She didn't know why she said it. Maybe it was the vulnerability in his voice, or the way his presence seemed to fill the room. But at that moment, she felt like she could finally admit it. This arrangement, this contract marriage, had become something more. Alex watched her closely, his eyes searching hers for a hint of what she was thinking. You don't have to say anything, he said quietly, standing up and walking over to the window. I'm not asking you to change anything either. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Emily nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. She didn't know what was happening between them, but one thing was clear: things were no longer as simple as they once seemed. She had walked into this marriage expecting nothing more than security. But now, she was beginning to wonder if there was a chance for something real, something beyond the contract they had signed. As the days passed, Alex and Emily found themselves drifting closer to one another, though neither of them dared to acknowledge the shift. They continued with their lives, their routine, working together, supporting each other. But something had changed. It wasn't just about the business anymore. They had started to open up, to share more of themselves with each other. And every small gesture, every conversation, seemed to draw them in closer. Emily couldn't help but feel a flutter in her chest whenever Alex smiled at her, or when he would drop by the restaurant just to check in on her. She had never imagined that something so simple could mean so much. She still wasn't sure where this would lead, but for the first time since their wedding, she found herself hoping for something more. But as much as she wanted to believe that something real could come from this, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too good to be true. The foundation they were building was fragile, and every step they took toward each other felt like a risk. Would they be able to cross the line from fake to real? Or would the walls they had both built around their hearts keep them from ever getting any closer? Emily stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back at her, but for the first time, it wasn't just her usual tired face she saw. She saw someone who had changed in ways she hadn't fully realized until now. Her life had become a mix of routine, responsibilities, and now, feelings she couldn't ignore. Every day, she found herself wondering if Alex was feeling the same pull she was. They had started this journey as strangers, bound by a contract, but somewhere along the way, things had become different. She couldn't deny it any longer. She was no longer just playing a part. She was beginning to feel things for him, things that confused her, things she wasn't sure she was ready to face. The shift in their relationship hadn't gone unnoticed by Alex either. Over the past few weeks, he found himself thinking about Emily more than he should. She wasn't just the woman he had hired to be his wife, she was someone who had started to challenge everything he thought he knew about relationships. He had spent so many years building his empire, focusing on wealth and success, that he never realized how empty it all was without someone to share it with. And now, Emily had become that person, whether he was ready to admit it or not. One afternoon, after a long day at the office, Alex decided to visit her at the restaurant. He didn't call ahead, just showed up unannounced. As usual, Emily was busy managing the chaos of the dinner rush, moving between tables and checking on her staff. She barely noticed him when he walked in, but when their eyes met, something shifted. There was an unspoken connection between them, something more than just their marriage of convenience. Alex had come to realize that he was beginning to care for her in a way he hadn't planned. I hope I'm not interrupting, Alex said, his voice soft but carrying over the noise of the restaurant. Emily looked up, surprised, but a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Not at all, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. What brings you here? I wanted to see you, Alex replied, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto her. I thought maybe you could use a break. Emily felt a flutter in her chest, but she quickly masked it with a casual nod. I'm fine. Just busy as usual, she said, though she knew deep down that this moment, this small act of care, was starting to mean more to her than she was willing to admit. They spent the rest of the evening together in a quiet corner of the restaurant. Emily finished up her work while Alex sat across from her, watching her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. For the first time, he wasn't just observing her for her skills as a business partner, was looking at her as someone he genuinely cared about. And Emily, despite herself, found herself opening up to him more than she ever had before. "I never thought this would be how my life turned out," Emily said, her voice softer than usual. "I never expected to end up in a marriage like this, with someone like you. It's complicated, Alex. But it's also been kind of comforting in a weird way." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his for any sign of judgment. Alex met her gaze, his expression unreadable. But then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "I never expected this either," he said, his voice low. "But it's been surprising in a way I didn't know I needed. Maybe we both needed it." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, it felt like time had slowed down. Emily didn't know what to say, but she didn't need to. The quiet between them was more than enough. It was in that silence that they both realized something had changed. They weren't just playing a role anymore, they had become something real, even if they weren't ready to fully admit it. Over the next few days, Emily and Alex found themselves in a routine that felt oddly familiar. They spent more time together outside of work, their interactions becoming less about the business side of their marriage and more about the personal. They went for walks, shared meals, and talked about everything from trivial matters to their deepest fears. Emily had started to see a side of Alex that no one else had. He was still the strong, powerful man he had always been, but there was a vulnerability to him that she had never noticed before. He was opening up, slowly but surely, and she couldn't help but be drawn to him. One evening, as they were walking back from dinner, Alex stopped her in the middle of the street. "Emily, I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, his voice serious. "This wasn't supposed to be anything more than a business arrangement, but the more time we spend together, the more I realize. I can't ignore how I feel about you. I know we're not in a traditional relationship, but I think I've started to care for you, more than I thought was possible." Emily's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't know what to say. She had never imagined Alex would feel this way, but hearing him admit it was more than she had expected. She wasn't sure if she was ready to admit it, but deep down, she knew that something real was growing between them, something that couldn't be ignored. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt a sense of hope for the future. She had walked into this marriage thinking it was just a means to an end, but now, she wasn't so sure anymore. Could they really make this work? Could something real come out of their fake marriage? She wasn't sure, but for the first time, she was willing to find out. Days passed, and Emily found herself caught between the life she had built and the unexpected emotions she was starting to feel for Alex. She had entered this marriage with nothing but a plan to protect her future, but now, she was beginning to wonder if she had stumbled into something far deeper than she had anticipated. As the weeks went by, their connection continued to grow, and with every conversation, every glance, Emily realized that she wasn't the only one who was beginning to care. Alex was too. It was subtle at first, the way he would look at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, the small gestures of kindness that seemed to be happening more and more frequently. But every moment they spent together made it harder to ignore what was happening between them. One night, after a particularly long day at work, Emily sat on the couch in their apartment, exhausted but unable to sleep. She had always been someone who kept herself busy, who never let her guard down, but now, with Alex in her life, things felt different. She could no longer deny that the lines between business and emotion were starting to blur. The thought of it scared her, but also excited her in a way she couldn't quite explain. As she sat there, lost in thought, Alex walked in, his usual confident stride softened by something she couldn't quite place. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her before speaking. "You look like you need a break," he said, his voice soft. "How about a night off? Just the two of us, no business, no pressure." Emily looked up at him, surprised by the suggestion. She wasn't used to him being this thoughtful. She had never expected Alex to be the type to offer a quiet night together, especially not after everything they had been through. A night off, she repeated, her heart skipping a beat. That sounds nice. She hadn't realized how much she needed it until now. There was something in his eyes, something that made her feel like this wasn't just about escaping their responsibilities, it was about connecting with each other in a way they hadn't before. The evening unfolded slowly, with the two of them sitting together, talking and laughing, just like any other couple might. There were no expectations, no ulterior motives, just the simplicity of being in each other's company. Alex had ordered takeout from her favorite restaurant, and they ate in the living room, sharing stories and small jokes. Emily found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't done in a long time, her walls coming down without her even realizing it. As the night wore on, Emily felt a warmth spreading through her, not from the food or the wine, but from the way Alex was looking at her, like she mattered. Like she was more than just a contract. She had never seen him like this before, and it left her feeling a little vulnerable, but in a good way. For the first time since their wedding, she felt like they were more than just business partners. Maybe they could be something more. As the evening came to a close, Alex stood up and stretched. "Thanks for tonight," he said, his tone quiet but sincere. "I needed that." Emily smiled, her heart fluttering in her chest. "Me too," she replied, not even trying to hide the warmth in her voice. Alex turned to her, his expression serious now. "Emily, I know we agreed this would never be more than what it is. But I need you to know that I'm not just doing this out of obligation anymore. I care about you. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I realized that I can't imagine my life without you in it." His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. She had always known that Alex was different, but hearing him say it out loud felt surreal. Could this really be happening? Was he really saying he cared about her? For a moment, Emily didn't know how to respond. She had never expected him to open up like this, to show any vulnerability. But here he was, laying it all out in front of her. She took a deep breath, her emotions swirling inside her. "I care about you too, Alex," she said softly, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions flooding her. "I never expected any of this. But I can't deny that something's changed between us." The words hung between them, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. They both understood that this wasn't just a contract anymore. They had crossed the line, and neither of them was quite sure how to go back. As they stood there in the quiet of their apartment, Alex stepped closer to her, his hand reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want to go back," he said, his voice low. "I want to see where this goes. Together." Emily felt her heart race, her pulse quickening as she looked up at him. She had never imagined that this would be the way it would happen, that a contract marriage would turn into something real. But here they were, standing on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. She nodded, her heart in her throat. "Me neither," she whispered. "Let's see where this goes." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Emily didn't feel afraid. She felt hopeful. And maybe that was enough. As the days passed, the bond between Alex and Emily grew stronger. What had started as a marriage of convenience had become something much more. They no longer just shared a home, but their lives were slowly intertwining in ways that neither of them had expected. The connection they had built, founded on mutual respect and understanding, began to bloom into something deeper. They still maintained their professional fronts when necessary, but behind closed doors, there was a tenderness between them that was impossible to ignore. One evening, after a long day at the office, Alex surprised Emily by showing up at the restaurant unannounced. She had been busy with a large party and didn't see him walk in until he was standing near the bar, watching her with a faint smile on his face. Emily, feeling the weight of the day on her shoulders, barely had time to greet him before he stepped up to her, handing her a small bouquet of flowers. "For you," Alex said, his voice soft. Emily looked at the flowers, then back at him, completely caught off guard. It wasn't just the gesture that surprised her, it was the thought behind it. She wasn't used to this side of Alex. The man who had once been all about business now seemed to care in ways she never expected. "Alex, this is unexpected," she said, still in shock. "Thank you." She couldn't help but feel a warmth spread through her chest. She had never imagined a man like him, a powerful CEO, would be capable of such simple kindness. Alex's smile deepened as he watched her. "I thought you could use a reminder that you're appreciated. Not just for what you do here, but for who you are." Emily didn't know how to respond. She had always kept her emotions in check, never allowing herself to get too close to anyone. But Alex had slowly been breaking down those walls, showing her a different side of him, one that was genuine, caring, and real. She had never thought this could happen, but with every passing day, she found herself falling for him more and more. That night, after closing the restaurant, Emily and Alex sat together on the balcony of their apartment. The city lights sparkled in the distance, and the soft hum of traffic was a constant reminder of the world outside. But inside their little bubble, everything felt quiet, peaceful. They didn't need to speak much. Just being together was enough. "You've changed things for me, Emily," Alex said, his voice low and sincere. "I never thought I'd need anyone in my life. But now, I can't imagine my days without you in them." Emily looked at him, her heart beating faster. She hadn't expected him to open up like this, to let down his guard. But in this moment, she realized how much he meant to her, how much her feelings for him had grown. She had come into this marriage thinking it would be nothing more than a contract, but now, it was clear this was real. "Alex, she started, unsure of how to express the whirlwind of emotions inside her. But before she could finish her sentence, Alex reached out and gently took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I know," he said softly, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know you're not sure where this is going, and neither am I. But what I do know is that I want to find out. With you." For a moment, Emily could only stare at him, her breath catching in her throat. She had spent so much of her life holding back, trying to protect herself from getting hurt. But with Alex, it was different. There was no pretending, no games, just honesty. And it was that honesty that made her feel safe, for the first time in a long time. "I want that too," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never thought I'd say it, but I do. I want to see where this goes." Alex smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. He leaned in, brushing a soft kiss against her forehead, a simple gesture that meant more than words could say. As they sat there together, the world outside felt distant. It was just the two of them now, facing whatever came next. The next few days brought a shift in their dynamic. Emily found herself waking up each morning with a sense of anticipation, wondering what the day would bring with Alex by her side. They continued their usual routines, but now there was a new energy between them, one of genuine affection and trust. It wasn't just the business partnership they had once agreed upon, it was something deeper, something real. But despite the growing closeness, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was still fragile. There were moments when she would catch herself wondering if she was truly ready to let herself fall for him completely. She had spent so much time guarding her heart, and now, with Alex, she was opening it up in ways she never expected. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Emily turned to him with a serious expression. "Alex, what happens if we can't go back to the way things were?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "If we're no longer just playing a part, what does that mean for us?" Alex looked at her, his expression soft yet confident. "It means we keep moving forward, Emily. We keep building something real. We don't go back. We move ahead, together." And for the first time, Emily felt like she wasn't alone. They weren't just two people bound by a contract anymore. They were partners both in business and in life. Things between Alex and Emily were beginning to feel like they were shifting into something neither of them expected. They had started this arrangement as two strangers, bound by a contract, but now, as the days turned into weeks, the lines between fake and real were becoming increasingly blurred. Every time they spoke, every time they shared a glance, it felt like there was more to it than just business. But just when they were beginning to think that maybe this could work, a situation arose that threatened to tear everything apart. It started one Friday evening when Emily received a call at the restaurant. She was in the middle of a busy rush, trying to keep up with orders, when her phone buzzed. It was from one of Alex's associates, and the news was unsettling. There was an urgent meeting at the company the following Monday, and Alex needed her there by his side as his wife. It wasn't unusual for them to attend events together, but this felt different. The tone of the conversation suggested there was more at stake than a simple business appearance. Later that night, when Emily and Alex were finally able to talk, she could see the weight of the situation in his eyes. "I need you to be at this meeting with me," Alex said, his voice tight with pressure. "There are some people who will be there who won't understand if we don't present a united front. It's important for the company's future." Emily nodded, but she could feel the tension building in her chest. This wasn't just another event, it felt like a test, one that could change everything. As they prepared for the meeting, Emily couldn't help but feel a knot form in her stomach. She had always been the strong one, the one who kept it together, but now, as she prepared to enter the world of Alex's business dealings, she felt like an outsider. She wasn't used to the cutthroat nature of corporate life, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a part again. The morning of the meeting, Emily arrived at the company's headquarters with Alex, her nerves on edge. The building was massive, towering above the city with its sleek, modern design. She had never felt more out of place in her life. Alex's colleagues and business partners were all sharp, polished, and used to the world of high-stakes deals. And there she was, a waitress-turned wife, trying to fit into a world that felt like it wasn't hers. As they walked into the conference room, all eyes turned toward them. Alex's business associates greeted him with nods and handshakes, but when their eyes fell on Emily, she could see the judgment in their expressions. They were wondering who she was and what she was doing there. Emily stood by Alex's side, trying to remain calm, but inside, she was shaking. She was out of her depth, and it was all too clear. The meeting began, and Emily stayed silent, watching as Alex effortlessly took control of the room. His confidence was undeniable, his leadership evident in every word he spoke. But as the meeting dragged on, Emily couldn't ignore the growing tension in the room. The discussions turned from business to personal, with some of the attendees throwing in pointed remarks about their relationship. Emily could feel the weight of the scrutiny, and it began to eat away at her confidence. Then, during a particularly tense moment, one of Alex's rivals spoke up, his voice dripping with disdain. "So, this is the woman who's been standing beside you all this time? Interesting." The comment hit Emily like a slap in the face, and she could feel her face flush with embarrassment. Alex's eyes narrowed, and without missing a beat, he shot back, "Yes, this is my wife. And she's here because I trust her, unlike some people in this room." The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, everything went silent. Emily glanced at Alex, her heart swelling with a mix of admiration and something deeper. He had defended her, stood up for her in a way she hadn't expected. But the moment quickly passed, and the meeting resumed. By the end, Emily felt emotionally drained. The pressure of the situation, the constant judgment, and the knowledge that she was still just a contract wife in the eyes of some of these people weighed heavily on her. As they left the building, Alex turned to her, his expression softening. "I know that was tough," he said quietly. "But you did well. I'm proud of you." Emily wanted to say something, to share how she felt, but the words wouldn't come. She wasn't sure if she was proud of herself or if she was just relieved it was over. Alex reached out, taking her hand in his. "I know this is all overwhelming, but I need you to understand something. You're not just my wife for appearances. You've become a part of this. A real part of it." His words hit her harder than she expected. For the first time, Emily felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't just playing a role in Alex's life. She was becoming a true partner, and that scared her more than anything. As they walked away from the building, side by side, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that things had changed again. The walls she had built around herself were crumbling, piece by piece. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to stop it. The days following the meeting at the company were a blur for Emily. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between her and Alex. It wasn't just the way he defended her in front of his colleagues, it was the way he had looked at her afterward, like she wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. She didn't know what to make of it. Was this real? Were they really becoming something more than just a contract? Her heart told her yes, but her mind wasn't ready to accept it. Alex had been distant in the days after the meeting. He was still present, still supportive, but there was a quiet tension between them. Emily noticed it in the small things, the way he avoided making eye contact when they spoke, the way he seemed distracted when they were together. It was as if he was pulling back, unsure of what to do with the feelings that had started to surface. One evening, after another long day, Emily came home to find Alex sitting on the couch, his jacket draped over the back, his phone in his hands. He didn't look up when she walked in, his eyes glued to the screen. She stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure of what to say. The air between them felt heavy, like something unsaid was hanging in the balance. "Alex," she said quietly, taking a step forward. "Is everything okay?" He looked up at her, his expression unreadable.
"Yeah,"
he said, but his voice was distant. "Just thinking about things." Emily felt her heart sink. It wasn't just the meeting Anna-Marie, it was something more. She could feel the walls between them, walls she had never expected to be there. She had let herself get too close, and now, she wasn't sure how to handle the distance. "What are we doing, Alex?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought we agreed this was just a business deal. But it doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels different. I feel like I'm falling for you." Alex's gaze softened, but there was a sadness in his eyes. He stood up and walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "I didn't want this to happen," he said, his voice low. "I didn't want to need anyone, least of all you. But somewhere along the way, I started to realize that I don't want this to be just a contract anymore. I care about you, Emily. More than I should." The words hit her like a wave, sweeping over her with a mixture of relief and fear. She had been waiting for him to say it, to admit that the feelings between them were real, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel more complicated. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid of what would happen if they both admitted how they felt. But now that it was here, she didn't know what to do with it. "I care about you too," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to trust that this is real and not just some kind of illusion we've created." Alex's eyes searched hers, filled with an intensity that made her heart race. "I know this is complicated," he said, squeezing her hands. "But I want to try. I want to figure this out with you. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I don't want to do this alone." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined that she would find herself in this position, wanting something more than what she had bargained for, unsure if it was the right thing to do. But as she looked at Alex, standing before her with his heart laid bare, she knew that she couldn't deny it anymore. She wanted this too. "Okay," she said, her voice steady now. "Let's figure it out together." Alex smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached his eyes. He pulled her into a hug, holding her close as if to reassure both of them that they weren't alone in this. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't going to be easy, but they had taken the first step toward something real. And for that moment, that was enough. Months passed, and the connection between Alex and Emily continued to grow, stronger than either of them could have anticipated. What started as a contract, a business arrangement between two people who barely knew each other, had slowly transformed into something real, something neither of them expected. They had taken the risk, they had chosen to take the next step, and now, here they were, standing together, ready to face whatever came next. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of uncertainty. They had their doubts, their fears, but they also had something they never thought they would find: each other. The walls they once had built around themselves had crumbled, and they were no longer just pretending. Their marriage, once only a means to an end, had become the foundation of a real partnership, built on trust, honesty, and love. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of their apartment, overlooking the city below, Emily turned to Alex with a soft smile. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue across the skyline, and for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. "I never imagined we'd get here," Emily said, her voice filled with a sense of wonder. "When we first started this, I thought it was just going to be a job, something to get me through. I didn't expect to find someone like you." Alex looked at her, his eyes full of warmth. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I didn't either," he admitted. "But I'm glad we did. I'm glad we took the chance." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey together settling in. Emily thought about how far they had come from strangers who signed a contract to partners who had built a life together. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. "Do you ever think about the future?" Alex asked, his voice slow and thoughtful. "About what comes next for us?" Emily smiled, her heart full. "All the time," she said. "And whatever it is, I want to face it with you. We've come this far, and I know we can keep going." Alex pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a warm embrace. "Together," he whispered. "Always together." As the night stretched on and the city lights flickered below them, Emily felt a sense of certainty she had never felt before. There was no longer any doubt in her mind. This wasn't just a contract, it was a commitment, a choice they had both made, and one that would shape the rest of their lives. In the end, their story was more than just about love, it was about finding something real in a world that often felt uncertain. It was about two people who had started out with nothing but a promise, and through trust and vulnerability, had built something unshakable. As Emily looked up at the stars, she couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, their journey had only just begun.